The piece is a series of tetroids bolted together. So each one bolts to the next one, and it rises up, gets bigger and bigger until it becomes this mighty, yet in a way precarious structure. The tetrahedron has been something that I've been interested in for many years. The first time I used the tetrahedron I was quite bold and stupid, I guess, in that I made 1,000 out of oak. And I just thought, as the sculptor, as the artist, I'll find the rules and the logics and make a sculpture. But I was completely sort of bamboozled by the geometry and the rules, the properties of the tetrahedron. They don't tessellate with themselves, so the sculpture almost dictated itself.
He made something like 1,000 of these to experiment with, and with some, I think by his own admission, some surprising results. He found that you can stack up regular tetrahedra into a triple helix form.
The first public commission I used it in was this piece called Axiom, which is this tower in the Ministry of Justice. All identical tetrahedrons, so it remains the same size and it spirals up like a triple helix.
It continues to wind upwards, but it never repeats itself.
Where Paradigm takes it to another level is that as the piece spirals up, it gets bigger each time by a sort of constant percentage. Working with an engineer who takes the time to prove it through the numbers is you actually can make things much lighter than you thought you could. You can push things to the level where you wouldn't be able to have the confidence to do intuitively. There's so many ideas that come out of the Paradigm form that I continue to find incredible sort of ideas within it.
The fact that Paradigm is the result of some years of inquiry into geometry, into scale, gives the work a certain quality that would be very difficult to reach just from a standing start.
The concept of Paradigm and the proposal for Paradigm has really consolidated this line of study with tetrahedrons. It pushed it to a whole other level.
I was a great advocate for making it as large as we could afford to ensure that we had something of sufficient grandeur that it wouldn't be overwhelmed by the size of the Crick Institute and the size of St Pancras.
Trying to make this piece to the size that he wanted it at just wasn't possible within the budget. And so we were just brainstorming all the different ways we could do that, and this idea of actually not making it in stainless but in core 10 was much more attractive than trying to keep with the stainless and make it much smaller.
The great thing about core 10 steel is it forms an oxidized coating which then protects the parent material. So it rusts a little bit and then stops rusting because of the copper.
The core 10 wasn't a compromise, but it was actually a late discovery that actually was going to make this thing better. It has such a rich surface and it will evolve slowly over time, but it's also, I think it's very appropriate for the area because of its industrial past and the sort of railways. And I think the palette of it against the building would work very well.
The size of the structure at the bottom to support all the weight at the top was always going to be a challenge.
0.8 of a metre across at the base, but by the time you get up to the top, this top tetrahedron is 5.5 metres wide.
It makes it quite an unstable structure under wind loads particularly, and so we really have to design that base to be really strong. The bolts that we used are marine grade, so they're often used on oil rigs, stronger than your standard bolts.
Conrad has got all the welded connections exposed, so they become part of the piece. The welders all have to be tested to show they're competent in doing the welds.
On a piece this big, there's maybe 20 passes before you get to the top, and then there's this cosmetic stitch across the top. We're pushing the limits of the materials and the bolts, everything to their sort of safe maximum. It's a beautiful piece of engineering. It's going to be immense, this thing, I mean, and audacious and hopefully very, very exciting and a great public sculpture.